My name is Margaret. I am 32 years old. I am married. My husband's name is Mark. He is 34 years old. We have been married for 5 years. We have a baby daughter. Her name is Emma. She is 6 months old. Mark is a good husband. He works as an accountant. He comes home at 6 every day. He plays with Emma. He helps me cook dinner. He makes me laugh. I love Mark. I trust him. Or at least I did. 3 months ago, everything changed. One evening, Mark said, "Margaret, I got a second job. I'll be working nights." I was surprised. I said, "Why? We're okay with money." Mark said, "I want to save more for Emma's future." I said, "What kind of job? Where will you work?" Mark hesitated. He said, "Just some evening work. I'll leave at 9 and come back after midnight." I asked again, "What kind of work?" Mark looked away. He said, "It's hard to explain, but don't worry, Margaret. I'll be safe." Something felt strange, but I trusted him. That night at 9, Mark left. The house felt quiet and empty. Every night after that, Mark left at 9 and came home late after midnight. Every night, he showered immediately when he got home. Then I started noticing things. One morning, I was doing laundry. I smelled Mark's shirt from the night before. Perfume. Women's perfume. Sweet and floral. Not mine. I do not wear perfume because it makes Emma sneeze. My heart stopped. Why does Mark's shirt smell like women's perfume? A few days later, I found a receipt in his coat pocket from an expensive Italian restaurant. Dinner for two, $150. The date was last Thursday, the same night Mark said he was working. My hands shook. Who did he eat with? I felt sick. That evening, I wanted to ask Mark about the receipt, but I was afraid of what he might say, so I said nothing. But I started watching him carefully. Mark was always on his phone, texting, smiling at the screen. When I walked into the room, he quickly closed his phone. I said, "Who are you texting?" Mark said, "Just work stuff." But he looked nervous, guilty. One night, his phone buzzed while he was in the shower. I picked it up. A text message from a contact named C. It said, "Can't wait to see you tonight. Same time." My heart broke. Can't wait to see you tonight. Who was C? When Mark came out, he was smiling. He looked happy, excited. He kissed me and left. I sat on the couch, holding Emma, crying quietly. Over the next week, more evidence appeared. Another receipt from a flower shop, 2 dozen roses, $75. Mark never bought me flowers. I also noticed Mark dressed better for his night shifts. He wore cologne. He styled his hair. My friend Sasha came over. She saw my red eyes. She said, "Margaret, what's wrong?" I told her everything, the perfume, the receipts, the texts. Sasha said, "Margaret, it sounds like he might be cheating." I shook my head. I said, "No, not Mark." But I did not believe myself anymore. That night, I decided to follow him. I asked my neighbor to watch Emma. At 9, Mark left. I followed his car. He drove for 20 minutes to a quiet neighborhood. He parked in front of a small house with a blue door. He walked up to the door. It opened. He smiled and walked inside. I sat in my car staring at that blue door. My husband just walked into a stranger's house at 9 o'clock. I felt like my world was ending. I waited 2 hours. Mark didn't come out. Finally, I drove home crying. Mark came home late, after midnight, like always. He showered, he got into bed. I pretended to be asleep, but inside I was screaming. The next day, I looked through Mark's phone. I found C's number and searched it online. The name Catherine appeared. I found her on social media. She was beautiful, long, dark hair, around 40 years old. She was older than my husband. My heart sank. This was C. This was the woman my husband was seeing every night. I looked at her photos. She looked happy, confident, everything. I wasn't anymore. I just had a baby. I had stretch marks. I was tired all the time. I barely wore makeup. Of course, Mark wanted someone else, someone beautiful, someone exciting. I cried and cried until I had no tears left. That evening, I couldn't even look at Mark. He said, "Margaret, what's wrong?" I said, "Nothing. I'm fine." He reached for my hand. I pulled away. I said, "Just go to your second job, Mark." He looked confused and hurt, but he left. The next day, I decided, no more lies, no more secrets. At 8:30, I stood in front of the door. I said, "Mark, we need to talk, right now." He looked surprised. He said, "Margaret, I have to leave." I said, "No, sit down and tell me the truth." Mark sat on the couch. I said, "Where do you go every night?" He said, "Margaret, I told you." I shouted, "Stop lying! I found the receipts, I smelled the perfume, I saw the text messages, I followed you to that house." His face went pale. He said, "You followed me?" I said, "Yes. Tell me who Catherine is. Tell me why you go to her house every night. Tell me everything." His eyes widened. Mark looked shocked. He said, "How do you know about Catherine?" I said, "Just tell me the truth, please." My eyes were full of tears. Mark ran his hands through his hair. Finally, he said, "Margaret, sit down. I'll tell you everything." I sat on the sofa. My hands were shaking. Mark said, "Margaret, Catherine is your mother." I froze. "What?" Mark said, "The house I go to every night? That's your mother's house." I could not breathe. My mother. I haven't seen her in 8 years. We had a terrible fight when I was 24. We stopped talking. When I married Mark, I didn't invite her. When Emma was born, I didn't call her. I cut her out of my life. Mark said, 3 months ago your mother contacted me. "Margaret, your mother is dying. She has stage 4 cancer. The doctors say she has maybe 2 or 3 months left." I could not believe what I just heard. My mother is dying. Mark said, "Your mother wanted to see you, to apologize, to meet Emma, but she was afraid to call you directly. So she asked me to visit her to tell her about you and Emma. She just wanted to know about your life before she died." I stared at him. I said, "So you've been visiting my mother every night?" He nodded. He said, "Yes, I talk to her. I show her pictures of Emma. I tell her stories about you." I said, "Why didn't you tell me?" The flowers were for her room, and C in my phone, I saved her as C so you wouldn't see her full name. Every piece of evidence made sense now. I began crying. I said, "I thought you were cheating. I thought you stopped loving me." Mark said, "Never. I would never do that, Margaret. Everything I did was for you." Mark pulled out his phone and opened a folder of videos. He said, "I recorded everything every night. I recorded your mother talking to you." He played one. My mother's face appeared. She looked thin and pale. She said, "Margaret, my beautiful daughter, I know I hurt you. I said terrible things. I was foolish. I just want you to know I love you. I always loved you." Mark shows me pictures of Emma. She's beautiful. I wish I could hold her. The video ended. My eyes were full of tears. I looked at Mark, this man who spent 3 months visiting my dying mother to protect my heart. I said, "Mark, I'm so sorry." He hugged me. He said, "It's okay." I said, "Can I still see her?" Mark said, "Yes, she's waiting." We drove to the house with the blue door. When I walked in, I saw her, my mother, lying in a hospital bed, weak and tired. When she saw me, she cried. "Margaret," I said. "I'm here, Mother. I'm here." She said, "I'm so sorry, Margaret." I said, "I'm sorry too, Mom. I love you." We talked for hours. We cried. We laughed. The next day, I brought Emma to meet her grandmother. Mother held her carefully and kissed her forehead. Mother said, "She's perfect." I visited my mother every day after that. We made up for lost time. 2 months later, my mother passed away peacefully. I was there, holding her hand. The last thing she said was, "I love you, Margaret. Take care of your beautiful family." At her funeral, I held Mark's hand. I said, "Thank you for bringing me back to her." Mark squeezed my hand. I realized Mark's love was deeper than I ever knew. He gave up his sleep for 3 months. He kept the secret even when I accused him of terrible things. All because he loved me. Now when people ask about my husband, I smile and say, "My husband's love is a secret, a beautiful, heartbreaking secret. And it gave me the greatest gift, the chance to forgive my mother before she died." If you like this story, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Learn English by Stories.